The first light of dawn touched the edges of the broken city like trembling fingers searching for life among ashes. The air was heavy, thick with silence, the kind that speaks louder than gunfire. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the monsters were still waiting, watching, listening, and humanity had finally stopped talking. Captain Mira Solen stood atop the crumbling walls of New Geneva, the last city still daring to call itself civilized. Her armor was streaked with soot and blood, not all of it hers. Her eyes were red from sleepless nights and from something deeper, something no soldier should ever have to feel. Betrayal. A low wind brushed across her face, carrying the faint scent of rain and smoke. In the valley below, the white flags that once fluttered in the name of peace now lay trampled in the mud, shredded by claws larger than a man's chest. Those flags had meant hope once. Now they meant something else entirely. "Captain," said Elias, her second in command. His voice cracked with exhaustion, but his posture was iron straight. "They've sent another message." Mira didn't turn. "From the monsters?" "From the council," he replied. "They want you to consider their proposal again." A bitter laugh escaped her lips, dry and sharp. "Consider?" she whispered. "We've been considering for 50 years, Elias. Every treaty, every talk, every promise, they always end the same way." He hesitated, then handed her the small hollow disk. When she activated it, the pale light projected the council's insignia, a stylized olive branch encircling a planet. The recording began, a calm, bureaucratic voice reading words that had lost all meaning decades ago. "Captain Solen, the council implores restraint. We must seek coexistence. Humanity cannot afford another war." Mira closed her hand around the device and crushed it. The shards scattered in the wind like dying fireflies. "There's no coexistence," she said softly. "Not anymore." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Only the quiet hum of distant machines filled the air. Below, in the streets of the city, children played near the barricades, their laughter fragile against the ruins. They were too young to understand that the monsters they drew in chalk on the walls were real. The monsters hadn't always been enemies. Once, humanity had called them allies. They had come from the black storms beyond the stars, vast shifting beings of flesh and thought. They promised knowledge, peace, shared survival, and humanity, weary from its own wars, believed them. Together they built wonders that touched the clouds, until the first betrayal, until the first city burned, until the first child disappeared into the night. Now, 50 years later, humanity stood at the edge of extinction, and the monsters offered peace once more. They always did, after every slaughter, after every broken truce, and every time humanity had said yes. Until now. A soft chime echoed from the tower behind them, a warning tone, deep and cold. Mira turned. "Scouts?" Elias nodded grimly. "Movement in the outer sectors, big, too organized for scavengers." "Monsters?" she asked. "Likely. They're testing the new perimeter." Mira took a slow breath. "Then it begins." She moved down the ramp, boots echoing against the metal stairs, every step deliberate. The soldiers at the gate straightened as she passed, their faces young but their eyes hardened by too much loss. She looked at them, not as soldiers but as what was left of her species. Every one of them was a promise that humanity would not die quietly. Elias followed. "What will you tell the council when they call again?" Mira paused at the gate. Beyond it, the distant hills were alive with movement, shadows shifting like smoke in the morning light. The monsters were coming, silent and graceful, as though war was an art they had perfected long ago. She looked back at him, her voice calm but filled with fire. "I'll tell them that peace died with the first scream, and humanity won't kneel again." The gates groaned open, and for the first time in centuries the banners of Earth rose, not white, but crimson. The soldiers cheered softly under their breath, not in joy but in defiance. It was the sound of a wounded world standing tall. Mira stepped through the gate and into the rising sun, her hand resting on the rifle at her side. The monsters would come as they always did, but this time, humanity had no treaties left to sign. Only resolve, only fire, only the words that would echo through the stars for generations to come. No more peace negotiations with monsters, ever. The first battle came before the sun had fully risen. It began as a whisper, sensors flickering. radar ghosts sweeping across the horizon, and ended with screams swallowed by thunder. From the command tower, Captain Mira Solen watched the valley bloom with fire. The monsters' forms were shadows wrapped in silver mist, their bodies shifting between shapes that hurt the human eye to follow. Where they walked, the ground itself seemed to shudder in fear. Elias stood beside her, scanning the feed through a cracked screen. "Outer defenses breached in Sector 5, he said, his tone tight. "They're not charging straight in this time. They're probing, learning." "They always learn," Mira murmured. "Faster than we can rebuild." Her gaze hardened. "Send in Delta Squad. Hold the line." Moments later, the sky was torn open by the roar of engines as drones and gunships surged forward, the air filled with trails of smoke, light, and fury. Humanity had built its machines to mimic its spirit. Relentless, stubborn, alive. But against the monsters, machines often felt small. Still, Delta Squad fought like fire made flesh. They moved across the ridge with precision born from desperation. The ground trembled under the impact of their weapons. Blue sparks from the monster's flesh lit the dark like fallen stars. Then through the chaos came a sound no one expected. A voice. It didn't come through speakers or comms. It came inside their minds, smooth as glass, cold as midnight. "Why do you persist, little ones?" Mira froze. The voice was everywhere, in her head, in the walls, in the very hum of the air. "We offer you peace still. Even now, after all you've done." "Done?" Mira hissed under her breath. "You burned our cities. You built them on our graves." The voice was ancient, filled with something that felt like sorrow, or the memory of it. Elias flinched, clutching his head. "Captain, they're using psychic resonance. Direct transmission." "Cut the channels," Mira ordered. "It's not coming from our systems," he said, wincing. "It's everywhere." "We never wanted this war." The voice continued, softer now. "You came to our stars, touched what you did not understand. We only defend what is ours." Mira clenched her fists. "Lies. Every time you talk peace, someone dies." For a heartbeat, silence. Then the voice whispered, "And yet, you still listen." The words struck something inside her, a wound that never healed. Mira turned away, slamming her palm against the console. "Shut it out, now!" The text scrambled, flooding the systems with white noise. The voice faded, but not completely. It lingered like a memory that refused to die. Outside, the battle reached its crescendo. Delta Squad fell back, half their units gone. The monsters withdrew, and not in defeat, but with a strange, deliberate calm, as if testing humanity's resolve. When it was over, the valley was quiet again, filled with smoke and the scent of scorched metal. Mira stepped outside the tower, feeling the cold wind cut across her face. Below, survivors were pulling the wounded to safety. She saw a boy no older than 16 carrying a soldier twice his size, refusing to let go. Another soldier knelt beside the fallen, whispering something Mira couldn't hear. "A prayer, maybe. Or a promise, Captain," Elias said softly, joining her. "They could have pushed harder. They didn't want the city, and not yet. They wanted our attention," Mira replied. "And they got it." He hesitated. "You heard the voice, didn't you?" She nodded slowly. "Every word. And if they're telling the truth?" he asked. "If we did take something from them once." Mira turned her gaze to the horizon where the smoke of the battle met the rising sun. Her eyes were weary but unyielding. Then they should have spoken before they started killing children. A pause. The wind carried the distant sound of crumbling steel. "Elias," she said quietly, "next time they speak, record it. Every word. Let the world hear their version of peace." He frowned. "Why?" "Because when we finally answer," she said, her voice like a blade drawn from its sheath, "I want history to remember that we gave them every chance, and that they threw them all away." She looked out at the black horizon where the monsters were gathering once more and whispered to herself, "Peace is no longer our language. Survival is." Night came slowly, stretching its shadows across the ruins of New Geneva like a blanket of mourning. The stars above flickered faintly, half hidden behind veils of smoke. Somewhere far beyond those stars, the monster's homeworld waited, silent, patient, ancient. Captain Mira Solen sat alone in the war room, surrounded by the soft hum of machines and the fading light of broken screens. Maps floated in holographic form around her. Battlefields, casualty lists, sectors lost and won. Every glowing mark was a story, every number a name. Humanity was holding but barely. Her hand traced the outline of an old scar across her wrist, a thin silver line she'd carried since the First War. She remembered how it happened. Not in battle. In peace talks. That memory came back sharp and heavy. It had been 15 years ago on the neutral world of Kareth, the first peace summit between humans and the monsters, back when they still called themselves the Elyrians. They weren't all shadows and claws then. Some took forms that mirrored humanity. Strange, tall beings of luminous skin and eyes like glass. They spoke with grace, promised an alliance of shared survival. Mira had been a young lieutenant then, standing guard in the hall as leaders shook hands. And then, without warning, one of the Elyrians reached across the table, not to attack, but to touch. A whisper echoed in her mind, a flash of images she couldn't understand. Cities of light, oceans turned to glass, screams of something vast dying under the stars. When she pulled away, blood ran from her nose and she collapsed. That was the first time humanity realized what they were dealing with. They didn't just speak, they entered. Mira exhaled slowly, shaking the ghost of that day away. The wound never truly healed. Not in her mind, not in her people's memory. The door behind her hissed open. Elias stepped in holding a battered data drive. Found something, he said quietly. Buried in the council archives. Took me all night to decrypt, she looked up. What is it? He placed it on the table. Proof the council's been hiding things. About the Elyrians. About the first contact. Mira's jaw tightened. Show me. Elias connected the drive. A shaky recording filled the air, flickering with static. The image of an old scientist appeared. Dr. Hanna Vell, one of the pioneers of early space diplomacy. Her eyes were hollow, her face pale under the harsh lights of the recording room. To whoever finds this, she began, her voice trembling. You must understand. They were not what they claimed. The video wavered. Mira leaned forward. The Elyrians. They came seeking peace, yes, but peace was only their surface. Underneath, there's something else. They are not individuals. They are fragments. Each of them carries a shard of one vast mind that once ruled their world. They call it the silence. And when they link to us, they don't just speak, they feed. Elias's expression darkened. Feed? Dr. Vell's voice cracked. On thought. On emotion. They consume memory to survive. We didn't realize until it was too late. The first colonies that joined them, they weren't destroyed by war. They were emptied. Every mind wiped clean. The recording cut out suddenly. The silence in the room was deafening. Mira sat still for a long time, her pulse echoing in her ears. Finally she spoke. So that's what peace meant to them. Elias nodded slowly. The council must have buried this after the First War. They wanted hope. They thought if people knew, they'd never agree to any treaty again. Good, she said, her tone cold. They shouldn't. She rose to her feet, her shadow long against the wall. This changes everything, does it? Elias asked quietly. Or does it just confirm what we already knew? Mira met his gaze. It gives us proof. Humanity won't just fight now, we'll unite. She walked to the viewport overlooking the dark horizon. In the distance, the monsters' silhouettes shimmered faintly, their forms pulsing with eerie light. Somewhere in that swarm, perhaps, one of them was listening, watching, waiting. Mira's voice was steady, but there was fire in it, a slow, growing flame. They think we're prey. They think our fear feeds them. But they've forgotten what happens when humans run out of fear. Elias's brow furrowed. And what's that? She turned to him, eyes glinting in the low light. We remember who we are. A deep rumble shook the ground, distant, rhythmic, like drums echoing from the mountains. The monsters were moving again. Mira reached for her comm. Prepare the lower batteries. If they come tonight, we'll show them what the ashes of humanity remember. Outside, the city lights flickered to life. Rows of flickering fire against the endless dark, and for the first time in years, the stars above seemed to burn brighter. The night was not quiet anymore. It screamed. It began with a pulse. A single flare of blue light across the heavens, silent but blinding. For a heartbeat, every star vanished, swallowed by the brilliance, and then from that brilliance the sky cracked open. Impact wave incoming, shouted the comms officer. Shields at 60%. Captain Mira Solen braced herself against the trembling wall as the blast rolled over New Geneva. The air shuddered, buildings groaned, and for a terrifying instant, It felt as if the world itself might split in two. Through the chaos, Mira's voice cut like steel. Status. Elias's reply came through static. The Elyrians aren't launching from orbit this time. They're inside the atmosphere. Thousands of them. His words were drowned out by the roar of something vast descending from the clouds. Outside, the storm broke open and shapes emerged. Luminous, shifting, impossible. The Elyrians no longer hid behind humanoid forms. They had shed pretense. Each was a living storm, a creature of light and memory stretching across the sky like torn constellations. Their voices came not through sound but through the trembling of the earth itself. You cannot fight forever. Mira stood in the tower's shattered window, staring into the radiant maelstrom. Her reflection looked almost ghostly in the glass, weary but unbroken. "Then watch us," she whispered. The first strike came like rain, droplets of liquid light that fell from the heavens and turned to fire where they touched. Streets erupted in flame. Drones took flight, their metal wings glowing against the inferno. Soldiers ran to the walls, shouting orders lost in the storm. Humanity fought not for victory anymore, but for meaning, to prove that they could. The Elyrians advanced, their movements fluid and graceful, terrible in their beauty. When bullets hit them, they dissolved into mist only to reform elsewhere. Energy weapons did little more than slow them down. But humans were stubborn things. Mira shouted into the comms, "Activate the mirror field." At once, hidden panels across the city unfolded, revealing massive reflective arrays. The plan was desperate, experimental. Human engineering born of desperation and brilliance. The arrays captured the light of the Elyrians' attacks, bending it, amplifying it, turning it back. The night erupted in mirrored fire. The monsters shrieked, not from pain, but from confusion. For the first time in centuries, they didn't understand what they were facing. They had always fed on thought and emotion, on humanity's despair. But now they faced something new. A unity of purpose, a refusal to yield. "Keep them locked," Mira shouted. "Every beam counts." Across the city, soldiers cheered between bursts of fire. Hope flickered where there had been none. Then came the sound, a low pulsing hum that shook the bones. The largest of the Elyrians descended. Vast, towering, its form too immense to comprehend. Where its light touched, walls melted. It wasn't attacking. It was speaking. "You twist our gifts. You reflect what you do not understand." Its voice filled every mind at once like a tidal wave of thought. "We came to share eternity. You choose extinction." Mira gritted her teeth, pain stabbing behind her eyes as the voice invaded her mind. "Get out!" she shouted. Though no one could hear what she fought inside her head. She saw flashes. Alien worlds reduced to dust. Beings devoured by their own creation. The birth of the silence. The Elyrians weren't just conquerors. They were survivors of a mistake so great it had unmade their souls. They had once sought connection, and in seeking it had devoured themselves. Now they sought to fill that emptiness. With humanity. Mira fell to her knees, clutching her head. "Elias," she gasped. "Their weakness, it's not their power. It's their hunger. They need us to believe we're losing." Elias's voice crackled through the comms. "Then we give them the opposite." She rose, blood trickling from her nose, and shouted over the city's frequency. Her voice carried to every fighter, every soldier, every terrified heart in New Geneva. "This is Captain Solen. Listen to me, all of you. They want our fear. They want our surrender. So give them nothing, not a tear, not a whisper. You fight, you laugh, you live. Let them choke on our defiance." And across the burning city, humanity answered. Laughter broke through the static. Someone began to sing. Others shouted words of courage, of home, of the earth they loved. The monsters faltered. The glowing giants hesitated, their lights dimming. The mirror arrays intensified, blazing brighter than the sun. The Illyrian swarm recoiled, their forms unraveling like smoke caught in a gale. The Great One roared, its voice cracking across the sky. "You cannot defy forever." "Forever's long enough," Mira said, raising her hand. Fire. The city unleashed its full fury. Beams of searing light cut through the storm. The great Elyrian shrieked, its vast form splitting, fading, dissolving into glittering dust. The others retreated, melting back into the clouds, leaving the air thick with ozone and silence. When it was over, New Geneva still stood, scarred, burning, but alive. Elias appeared beside Mira, his face pale with awe. You did it. We held them. No, she said softly. We did it. She looked at the horizon where the ashes glowed faintly under the dawn. The sky was cracked, yes, but through those cracks, light still poured. And humanity, once more, refused to kneel. New Geneva still burned when the Council's ships arrived. Sleek, silver craft descended from orbit, their hulls reflecting the red glow of smoldering ruins. They came not to aid, not to fight, but to question, to remind humanity that even in its suffering, it was still expected to obey. Captain Mira Solen stood on the landing platform as the Council delegation disembarked. She looked nothing like the pristine officers who stepped from their ships. Her armor was scorched, her face smeared with ash, her voice hoarse from shouting over the storm. But her eyes burned brighter than any uniform. The first to approach was High Consul Arden, a tall man with perfect posture and perfectly empty words. His robes fluttered in the wind as he regarded the city below. So, he said calmly, this is what defiance looks like. Mira didn't bow. This, she replied, is what survival looks like. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. You ignored our orders, Captain. You rejected another peace proposal. You attacked first. We defended ourselves, she shot back. The monsters invaded again. Words like monster, he said softly, are dangerous. They make peace impossible. Mira stepped closer, her voice low and fierce. Peace died the moment they decided we were food. Arden's eyes narrowed. Do you have proof? Elias appeared beside her, holding the data drive from Dr. Hannavel's recording. We do, he said, offering it forward. The Council's archives. You already knew. The consul hesitated, then signaled his aide. The recording played in the open air. Hanna's trembling voice filled the space again. Her warning about the Elyrians, their hunger for thought, their parasitic bond. When it ended, silence settled heavy as stone. Arden's composure faltered for a heartbeat. Then he straightened. That recording was sealed for a reason, he said quietly. Humanity needs hope, not hysteria. Mira's eyes flashed. Hope built on lies is just surrender with prettier words. Another council member, a woman named Saren, stepped forward. Captain Solen, she said softly, you've turned a battle into a movement. The people look to you now, not to us. Be careful what you inspire. Mira's reply was calm but sharp. If hope has a voice, it's not yours anymore. Arden sighed. You think defiance will save you? You've seen what they are. They could unmake this world in seconds. Then let them try, Mira said. We'll make them choke on the dust of every world they burn. Hours later, the council ship departed, leaving Mira and her people alone once more, with the smell of smoke and the hum of rebuilding machines. Elias joined her on the wall overlooking the valley. Below, survivors cleared debris, welded armor plates, and patched the wounded. Every action, no matter how small, was a rebellion against despair. They won't forgive you, Elias said quietly. The council. You made them look weak. They are weak, she replied. They've forgotten what it means to fight for something real. He hesitated. You ever wonder if we've forgotten too? Mira looked at him, then at the stars. Maybe, but we're remembering fast. A wind swept through the ruins, carrying the scent of iron and rain. The fires were dying, but their glow lingered, a stubborn ember refusing to fade. Suddenly, the comms tower flickered to life. Static buzzed, then cleared into a transmission. The voice that came through was deep, distorted yet unmistakably human. This is Outpost Vega. We intercepted something. An Elyrian signal. They're calling for a meeting, not an attack. A summons, Mira frowned. Summons for what? We don't know, but they're broadcasting it across all frequencies. The message says only this. Return what was taken. The words hung in the air like a blade. Elias whispered. Return what was taken. What does that mean? Mira didn't answer. She turned her gaze toward the dark horizon where the monsters had retreated. In her chest, something cold and familiar stirred, the same unease she'd felt at the first peace summit. When the Elyrian touched her mind, return what was taken, the phrase echoed in her memory, haunting and heavy. What if the Elyrians weren't just feeding on thought? What if long ago something deeper had been stolen, something binding them to humanity in ways neither side understood? Elias, she said quietly, get me everything we have on the first contact mission. Before Kareth. Before the war, he blinked. That's 50 years of buried history. Then dig, she said. Because something tells me this war didn't start where we think it did. That night, as the city slept beneath a fractured sky, Mira stood alone at the balcony of the tower. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the glass, distorted, wavering. For a fleeting instant, she thought she saw another face behind hers, pale, luminous, watching. The wind whispered, almost like a voice, "You carry what was ours." Mira turned sharply. But there was no one there. Only the stars, only the silence between them, and the growing certainty that the monsters were not entirely wrong. The archives were old, dust-choked and forgotten, hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy and time. Captain Mira Solen moved through the dim corridors with Elias at her side, their footsteps echoing off stone and steel. Each step felt like crossing into another age, an age humanity had buried, pretending it never existed. "Everything we have on Kareth," Mira said quietly, "and before. I want the original logs, the raw recordings, not the sanitized versions the council let anyone see." Elias nodded, scanning the shelves. "It's all here. If we survive this, it'll rewrite everything we thought we knew." She touched the first data terminal and activated the oldest recordings. Fuzzy images appeared, flickering like ghosts. Human scientists smiled at cameras long dead, unaware of the devastation that lay ahead. Then came a series of transmissions labeled Project Dawnlight. The files showed something Mira had never seen, a massive experiment conducted on the outer colonies, decades before the Elyrians arrived. Humans had been studying the strange energy pulses that occasionally rippled through deep space. They had called it the memory of fire. Elias whispered, "What is it?" Mira's eyes were wide, heart racing. I think it's a kind of consciousness. Not theirs. Ours. Something humanity created long before first contact." The screen shifted, revealing detailed schematics. Tiny fragments of energy, almost alive, had been captured, stored, and tested. The logs suggested humans had unknowingly drawn Elyrians to them, not the other way around. "They followed us," Mira said slowly. "We didn't just meet them, we awakened them." Elias stared at the screen. "Awakened them? That would mean all this, the war, the death, it's because of us?" "Not just us," Mira said grimly. "Because of humanity itself. Our curiosity, our drive to explore, to understand. We touched something beyond comprehension and they came. And when they came, we were not ready to defend what was ours." A sudden tremor shook the floor. The city groaned. Mira's eyes darted to the viewport. In the horizon, faint blue lights pulsed like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. The Elyrians were watching. They always had been. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "So this, the summons, the words, return what was taken. Maybe it's not a threat. Maybe they want something back, something we don't even realize belongs to them." Mira clenched her fists. "Or maybe it's a trap. One way or another, we have to face it. We can't hide behind walls and mirrors forever." The logs continued, showing experiments where humans had tried to communicate with the energy fragments. The fragments responded, not as machines, not as programs, but as something aware. They echoed thought and memory, reflecting human ambition and fear alike. One recording froze her blood. A young scientist, barely out of training, spoke directly to the camera. "The fragments, they're not just energy. They are memory. Every thought, every act, every decision we make, it shapes them, and we shape what they become. If we continue, they may reach beyond the stars." Mira felt her chest tighten. They did. They reached beyond the stars. "And now the Elyrians follow?" Elias swallowed hard. "So this war, maybe it's not just monsters and humans. Maybe it's memory, legacy, something we've carried without knowing." "Yes," Mira said. "And if that's true, then humanity's strength isn't just our weapons. It's our will. Our ability to choose, to resist, to remember. That's what they underestimate. That's what they can't consume." A sudden alarm cut through the silence. Sensors blinked frantically. Another incoming signal from deep space. The Elyrians were converging on a single point, New Geneva. Their summons had a location. Their intent was clear. Mira turned to Elias, her voice steady, filled with fire. "Prepare the fleet. Every soldier, every ship. This isn't just a battle. It's the memory of everything we are. And they want to test us." Elias hesitated. "Captain, if what we found is true, if we're the reason they exist, then we fight anyway," Mira interrupted, voice echoing like a bell. Because if humanity bows now, all of creation loses. We can't afford fear. We can't afford hesitation. We only have one choice. She gazed out at the horizon where the Elyrians shimmered, their forms vast and impossibly beautiful, their light reflecting memories they didn't understand. Fight, she whispered. Remember, survive. The city stirred below. Soldiers checked weapons, engineers ran diagnostics, children, unaware of the coming storm, watched the first stars of evening. Mira raised her hand, summoning every fighter to her command. Tonight, she said, her voice carrying across the city, we show them what it means to face humans unbroken. Tonight we turn memory into fire, and from the distant heavens the Elyrians answered, pulsing with anticipation. The war was about to enter its final chapter. The horizon burned with light, not from the sun but from the approaching storm. Thousands of Elyrians descended upon New Geneva, their forms vast, shifting, and blinding. The sky pulsed with energy, each flash a silent testament to the power they wielded. They were beautiful, terrifying, eternal, and they were about to test humanity like never before. Captain Mira Solen stood on the front wall of the city, her boots planted firmly on scorched metal, her rifle in hand. Around her, soldiers prepared for what seemed impossible. Engineers recalibrated the mirror arrays. Scouts whispered prayers to ancestors who had faced impossible odds and survived. Every heartbeat was defiance. Elias approached, handing her a small, flickering device. This is it, Captain. The final readings. We can amplify the memory of fire from the archives, project it against them. It's our last advantage, Mira examined it. Then we don't just fight. We remind them what it means to face humans. The first wave of Elyrians hit, and the ground shook beneath their immense weight. The mirror arrays flared, bending the monsters' light, reflecting their power back at them. Screeches of frustration echoed across the valley. Mira moved among her soldiers, shouting, guiding, inspiring. Hold your ground! Every weapon, every beam, every heartbeat counts. They feed on fear, give them none. In the chaos, she activated the device from the archives. Waves of memory of fire spread across the city like a living storm, an energy born from humanity's history, will, and resilience. The Elyrians faltered, confused, as memories long buried. Cities they had seen rise and fall, children laughing, dreams and courage, pierced their minds. They remember, one soldier shouted. They're showing them themselves. Mira realized the truth. This battle was never just about bullets or fire. It was about identity. Humanity's strength was not in armor or weapons. It was in choice and memory, in refusing to surrender even when the odds were impossible. The Elyrians roared, a sound that resonated inside every human's bones. Their forms began to crack, shimmer, and unravel under the onslaught of reflection and memory of fire. But they were not defeated yet. From the shadows, the largest among them emerged, the great one that had tested humanity before. Its eyes glimmered with ancient hunger, its voice like thunder. You cannot destroy us. You only prolong the inevitable. Mira stepped forward, raising her rifle not as a weapon but as a symbol. We are not afraid of the inevitable. We are humans. We fight, we endure, and we remember. For a long, terrifying moment, the Great One hesitated, its form flickering between beauty and terror. Then something extraordinary happened. Its light dimmed, softened. It pulsed not with anger but with recognition. The Elyrians began to retreat, not fully defeated but transformed. The memory of fire had shown them something they had long forgotten, that connection could exist without consumption, that strength could be mirrored, not stolen. The city below cheered, a sound filled with exhaustion, sorrow, and triumph. Mira lowered her rifle, breathing deeply. Her soldiers gathered around, faces streaked with soot and tears but alive. Humanity had endured. Elias approached, a quiet smile on his face. We did it. We actually did it. Mira shook her head slowly. No, Elias, we remembered. That's why we won. Not because we were stronger, but because we refused to be anything less than ourselves. The Elyrians, now distant and shimmering in the fading light, sent one last pulse across the sky, a signal not of war but of acknowledgement. In their way, they were saying what humans had already known. They had seen humanity, and they understood it now. Mira looked out over the city, the smoke rising like a scar on the earth, and whispered softly, no more peace negotiations with monsters ever, but perhaps We can teach them what it means to respect life. For the first time in decades, there was calm. The battle was over, but the story was not. Humanity had proven that even when faced with beings beyond comprehension, even when survival seemed impossible, their spirit was unbreakable. Children would grow up in the ruins of New Geneva, hearing stories of fire and courage. Soldiers would tell tales of impossible battles and victories that had seemed out of reach. And generations to come would know one simple truth: humanity does not kneel. Humanity remembers, humanity fights, and humanity survives. The sun rose over the ashes, burning through the lingering smoke, illuminating the city in a light that was neither mercy nor vengeance, but life itself. Captain Mira Solen stood tall, her shadow stretching across the battlefield. The Elyrians were gone, but the memory of their test would remain. Humanity had faced monsters not just in the stars but in themselves, and they had triumphed. In the end, it was not just a victory of weapons or strategy. It was a victory of spirit, courage, and the indomitable heart of humanity, and that heart would never stop beating.